Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Connections podcast. Today, we are talking with Debbie Thompson. We've known each other for around 5 years, so I'm really excited to get back in touch with her and touch base on all the things that have been changing. And welcome, Debbie. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good, I'm glad. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'd love to know a little bit about how your wellness journey started. And then, you can share some of the shifts and turns and all of that throughout the time. And then we'll dive into a little bit more about what you offer your clients and stuff.
Okay. Well, originally, as I look back now, my journey started when I was in late high school and I was struggling with eating disorders. I was a binge eater, I was an exercise bulimic, which nobody had a name for that at the time, but after the fact, I learned that was a thing that I had. And I essentially had like this, what I consider, I'm a spiritual person. So I believe that was kind of like this God-given insight into what I was doing, and I was healed. And I can go through into more of that later, but that's like the first part. And it's
Mhm.
important because I was essentially fine from like 22 until about 41 or 42. I basically ate intuitively, which again also was not a thing, but I just started eating like a normal person. Everything calmed down. I didn't binge anymore. I didn't exercise to get rid of food, I just exercised to exercise. But by then, and I had had 3 kids, and the weight just came off just by eating like a normal person. I didn't do anything crazy. But as I entered my early 40s, suddenly my weight was um, just steadily increasing. And I didn't know why, because I wasn't doing anything different. I was still eating like a normal person, is what I called it. And so the more it went up, though, the more uncomfortable I got. I just started having achy knees. I got gout. My digestion started to get really bad. I probably had kind of like IBS symptoms. Again, I didn't know a name for that, but that's pretty much what I think it was. Trying to think of what else. Those were the big things. And also my cycles. This was very hormone related, which I didn't know at the time, but my cycles were getting off. Um, I had more symptoms of a fibroid that I had, and which meant heavier bleeding, and my sleep was getting poor. So a lot of things were going downhill, but because of my generation, if you're gaining weight, that's the only thing you're worried about. So I started trying to lose weight again. And I did anything I knew, because eating like a normal person wasn't doing anything anymore. I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was slash calories and try to burn them. I didn't go into binge cycles, and I wasn't exercising directly after eating, sort of like a purge, but I just did a lot of cardio. I tried to slash what I was eating, and nothing happened. My weight just kept going up. And also, even though that didn't set off or trigger any kind of binge eating, it definitely set off kind of like I was all or nothing. I was either doing really good and slashing my calories, or I couldn't take it anymore and I was back to just like eating everything normally. So one day, this went on for from about, like 41 years old till like 46 or 7. And the weight just kept going up, and I was more and more uncomfortable, constantly growing out of clothes. Oh, my energy level like tanked
Mm-hmm.
by then. I partially because of the achy knees, and partially because of the increased weight. It was harder for me to be active. So like if my friends wanted to go do something, I was like literally kind of like having an anxiety attack that I would not be able to keep up with them on a bike ride or a hike or anything. And I just did not feel good. And again, the dieting was doing nothing, and the exercise I was doing was nothing. So by this point, Facebook was a thing. At first, it really was not a thing when I was 41. By then, it was in existence, and people that were, coaches and fitness people had pages. And
Mhm.
so I followed a couple pages, and what I learned is that for when as you age, we lose muscle mass. So when you lose muscle mass, that also like technically kind of like slows the metabolism. And there's kind of debates around that. But anyway, it can slow, make, you don't burn as much. You literally do not burn as many calories at rest without muscle. Muscle burns more calories at
Mhm.
rest as well as while you're exercising. So
Mhm.
this is why the cardio was doing no good. And once I started strength training, it rebuilt the muscle, boosted my metabolism. I started to, it just melted off. But at the same time, the other key thing was not just that, but I started to like these little breadcrumbs, which started in 2011 and led to you 8 years later, I guess, 7, 8 years later, was that I was learning that food was more than calories. So,
Mhm.
in other words, there's protein to it, fat to it, carbs to it, lots of nutrients, lots of vitamins, and also there's lots of chemicals in our foods now, and there's lots of hormones in our foods now, and there's lots of things that were complicating my health. So because I was just not slashing calories, but I was actually learning that the body also needs a lot more protein for the muscle, which is burning more fuel, but that the muscle is, sort of the center of your energy. So the more
Mhm.
muscle you have, the more energy you have. And the less processed foods I was eating, because processed foods don't tend to have a lot of protein in them. They're just,
Mhm.
they're chemicals and carbs pretty much.
Yeah.
So I had no idea, but by doing this, um, and then learning the difference between kind of like food without what meat without hormones, dairy without
Mhm.
hormones, more natural foods. Suddenly, no more achy knees, no more IBS symptoms. Energy, lots and lots of energy. I had never run in my entire life. Suddenly, I was running. I ran a 5K. I ran lots of 5Ks. I ran 10Ks. I ran a half marathon. Suddenly, all these things are gone. So I had read the phrase somewhere on one of these Facebook pages about all disease begins in the gut. And I believe that's Hippocrates, right? And then
Mhm.
also let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And
Mhm.
I started to read stories of a lot of people who had reversed all kinds of diseases through lifestyle changes as opposed to medication and sick care, and it's just led me down that rabbit hole of not just, food and exercise, but also what products am I using? How much sunshine am I getting? How am I managing stress is a huge, that's
Mhm.
my current one. Um, I try to, do that almost like it's my job. Uh,
Yeah.
sleep, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also balanced my hormones, which was another thing, and I found out later I had been going through perimenopause when all that was going on.
Mhm.
I went through menopause, had very, very few symptoms, um, and pursued help from a hormone specialist, so that's helping me now in this phase as well. So it's very holistic.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that I have one client in particular I'm definitely gonna be sending this podcast recording to,
Okay.
because, similar thing, like, gaining the weight, lots of hormone issues. I'm not sure about the bleeding, but lots of poor sleep, lack of energy, all of that, and I
Mm,
think that so many women, um, deal with that and then don't necessarily recognize and maybe haven't learned, some of that holistic aspect of understanding how the body needs protein, how strength training is better than cardio, like all of those things.
mhm,
So I love that. Um, let's cycle back before we get too far into like the now and you had mentioned like the eating disorder. I totally
mhm,
forgot about
mm,
that because that is, I think, one of the things you were supporting people with back when I had started. You were
mhm.
like discussing like the binge eating and all of that kind of stuff. So, feel free to just kind of jump into whatever you want to there as far as supporting people and thoughts, advice, what worked for you through getting through that.
Okay. I think one of the biggest things I learned now, all these decades later, is that dieting apparently is one of the leading causes of binge eating. It's just a natural primal instinct that the more we're slashing, and back then it was such extreme dieting, but they're
Mhm.
still around today, as we know. Extreme deprivation, it just makes your brain think you're in a famine and basically insist you start eating. And usually, the more depleted you are, the more that's where the binge
Mhm.
it's just an instinct. And when you think of our, way back ancestors, the cave people, they had to do that. Like if they had been in a famine, they had to eat all they could get because they didn't know
Mhm.
when they were going to eat again. So that is like a survival mechanism. Our hunger signals are there to keep us alive because that's the brain's job. So that number one, that was such a big aha and makes total sense. We all totally feel women have so much shame about I have no willpower. I suck at, what I'm not
Mhm.
self-disciplined. I can't stay on a diet. I can't keep weight off. But it's really the method we were shown. It was never about health. It was
Right.
always about this deprivation. And because we saw that some women could do it, there are some women, a lot of people that I talked to, it was their mothers. And then my
Mhm.
generation continued it a little bit, but seemed to have be this sort of like sandwich generation. Your generation saw that and wants nothing to do with it. A
Mhm.
lot of women, not
Most of the
everybody,
yeah,
but
mostly. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear so many stories about like moms of my generation putting their daughters on diets in like first and second grade, and God help us. So
Mhm.
I didn't do that, but obviously when you're formed with that mindset, that is so difficult and leads to, so much body image and all of that, and resistance even to wanting to eat healthy.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing is realizing that this has nothing to do with any woman, the one you're thinking of or any of the other one
Yeah.
having some kind of character problem or willpower problem. It's really it's the method we were shown. And then now, even if like a lot of the women I work with, even if they are starting to learn from me, because I don't put anyone on a diet, if they're starting to learn just more of an intuitive mindful eating, but they still are wobbly, we need to work through that, your brain wiring and your mindset,
Mhm.
and that, whether it's out and out trauma from how you were taught about food or how food was whatever was around you. A lot of women too, they were soothed with food by their
Mhm.
parents, so you have
Mhm.
the opposite thing. So we need to go deeper into that, but it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with your character or your
Mhm.
ability.
Right.
So then that in the health coaching school I went to, thank God, like how I stumbled on it. We learned a lot of like visualizations, mindfulness, meditation, that kind of thing, and rewiring the subconscious and really going gently. When I started getting healthier again myself, being, 47 years old by the time I think I was getting around to it, 46, 47. I felt like I was too old to do anything cold turkey anymore, and that actually helped me because I didn't try anything extreme, and that kept me off the roller coaster. All I could do was I went to one exercise class a week, one for months, because that's all I could get myself to do. I was a single mother with 3 teenagers. All I could do. And I ate more protein at meals. That was it. I
Mhm.
still ate junk. I still ate carbs. I just ate more protein and went to one extra, and I dropped weight. And
Mhm.
because it was so non-threatening to my primal brain, and because it was so gradual, I just could stick with it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that is one of those super huge keys because like you had mentioned before, you went through the calorie deficit and the cardio but it was very all or nothing. So you were probably either really exercising heavily or not at all. And you were either like starving yourself, which does not help the body.
mhm,
Um eh, like understanding nutrition and like it's not a calorie deficit, it's how your body is using those calories and what are those calories doing? Are they
right.
helping or hurting? But that gentle piece is something that I really value because like the people that I work with are often like they're just overwhelmed and like and if you talk to me
Absolutely.
you get a lot of information, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed and be like, oh, well, I need to do all these things. And she just told me all this stuff. No, like just choose one of those things that I told you and start there and allow that to become a habit and then be able
Mhm.
to slowly start habit stacking. And what people will find is that and this is what I've been finding, especially in this year, the more that I am gentle and give myself that grace of like, oh, I had a rough day today, but tomorrow I'll do better. I'm doing better today, whatever. Or even like, okay, I did terrible at breakfast, but you know what? I'm going to choose something better at lunch because, so
Mhm.
many people will be like, oh, well, I already messed up. So let's just do whatever
Yes.
we want for the rest of the day. No, you can still make a choice right now to shift the whole day.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that and that's something that I have loved in watching your content is that you're like, hey, do this one swap, just one. And like,
Mhm.
and that builds that time. And the more that you do it and the more you see results, you often then will make even bigger swaps and bigger shifts a lot quicker. And then they stay and they're sustainable and they're consistent. And then you still like if you fall off for a couple days or a week or whatever, like you can get back on quicker because you built some of those foundations. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Um, what do you there's so many different ways we can go with conversation. What do you want to talk about in regards to, say, hormones, or what has been the biggest piece for you in your healing journey from,
Mm.
having all those symptoms to shifting?
Um, for me personally, and as you have certainly know, but listeners might not know, is everybody is totally different. So what works for one person won't necessarily work for you, and that can be both encouraging and discouraging. But you may say, "I already tried that." What I'm going to
Mhm.
say. So for me, the biggest thing was that I think, without realizing, was getting the hormones out of my meat and dairy. I think. Um, yeah, that seemed to stabilize things a lot. And then also, but here's the other part is seeing the hormone specialist, and the people that I work with would be very in line with, people that you interview, or, anyone that you would align with, is, it's very holistic. They're not
Yeah.
just saying, okay, because I'm postmenopausal now, they're not just saying like, here's some progesterone and here's some estrogen.
Mhm.
They are, first of all, your nutrients and vitamins influence all of this, cortisol influences all this. So they test for all of the kind of the underneath root part and how all everything fits together, the thyroid and the hormones and the adrenals and all of it. So I would definitely recommend someone talk to somebody holistic. And also, definitely don't just buy something off the shelf that says I'm trying to think of that estrogen pill that's like,
Yeah.
at Rite
Yeah.
Aid. You
Mhm.
don't know how much you need.
Mhm.
So it's, first of all, a waste of money. I mean,
Yeah.
when we think about health and wellness being expensive, a lot of what contributes to it being expensive is us just trying random things
Mhm.
without being tested for exactly what our unique body is, low in, high in, what needs balanced exactly.
Mhm.
So those would be the two things for me.
Oh, I definitely agree. Um, feel who Do you want to share who you see? I'm
Sure.
totally
I
open
go
to
to
knowing.
good. Okay, I go to the Hormone Center. It's in Carnegie in Pittsburgh.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And just so people know, they are, the woman who started it is an MD, and they're all either nurse practitioners, physician's assistants. These aren't,
Mhm.
just
Uh-huh.
um, some like woo woo person that decided they can help you with your hormones. If that's
Right.
important to you, you can know these people are medical providers. So,
Yeah. Some people, that's definitely a key. So thank you
exactly.
for sharing. I'm not one of those people, but I do
All
know a lot
right.
of them
I
that
don't
do.
care. Yeah.
So that's perfect. Awesome. I'll definitely share that with others. Um,
Mhm.
I think that that's something that when you're eating, like that's been one of the things that I struggle with a little bit is the whole like, okay, you need to eat more protein, but like don't just get it at the store. Like find your farmer, understand what meat
Mm.
you're getting because we don't realize that like or even if we do realize, understanding that what we put into a cow or a pig or any type of animal that we're eating,
Yeah.
what we're feeding them, if it's just grain, there, that nutritional value is not the same as if it's being raised on a farm out in the open, getting grass, like, being raised sustainably, without all of those extra injections. Like, yeah, sure, the injections aren't, being put into the meat necessarily that's coming to the store is what, like,
Right.
people think, but it's like, what was that animal injected with? That is in the muscles
Hmm.
and tissues. And
Hmm.
so I think that that is definitely a huge key with that piece of, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is. And as we go through that, like, understanding more of like where your food comes from, like, it doesn't come from a store, it came from a farm somewhere, like, it
Right.
doesn't just, like, what are all of those pieces. And I know I've had some conversations with my husband and a few other people recently, like, around different vegetables. Like, you see lots of different reels on all the social media platforms of, like, dyes being injected into like vegetables, and you're like eating vegetables thinking you're eating something healthy, and you're like, oh, is it really? Because I swear,
Exactly.
I was getting, my kids love peppers, and I don't buy green
Mm.
peppers, I get the red, yellow, orange. And like, sometimes, like, my hands are covered in, like, color. And I'm like, I
Right.
don't feel like this is normal, because then, like, I get something from like a farmer's market and it's just clear because it's the color that it should be. And I'm like, this just,
Wow.
like, those types of things are like, know your, like, it's so much better if you know your farmer, or if you can raise your own
Yeah.
food, or, even having like something hydroponic in your home or something like that. And,
Hmm.
but yeah, food is such a key piece when it comes, and the,
Yeah.
the quality. Um,
Hmm.
I
Well,
love,
something I was going to say too,
yeah,
if that overwhelms people, is I personally, and I think from the women I've coached, because getting to that level of also being sure that the quality is better.
uh-huh,
Sometimes the first, just eating more protein and fat versus processed food and
hmm,
carby food can help you, because it's going to stabilize your blood sugar.
yes,
So I didn't know about the clean and necessarily pay attention to hormone free meat and dairy at first. All I
okay,
was doing was making sure I had
more
protein.
protein,
I was probably eating crappy tuna, crappy chicken, all of it, but it was just more protein,
hmm,
and it was stabilizing my blood sugar and keeping me full longer, which started to reduce like the inflammation and things like that.
hmm,
And was keeping, I didn't get gout again, etc. But the reason I mention that too is because that is part of what
yeah,
leads to the overwhelm, of like, oh, I can't start this until I locate the,
right, a
you
good
know,
farmer,
the
yeah,
best
yeah,
source. There are benefits to both. So there are
hmm,
benefits to the fact that it's cleaner for sure, and then there are benefits though to purely the protein
right,
of it. So yeah, one or the other is great. You don't have to do both right away. And
yeah,
because of the fact that I always say too, like, we all live in this real
mhm,
world. Nobody I know that's come to me, and they wouldn't be listening to this podcast anyway, is living off by themselves, growing their own food, and
right,
unaffected by anything. We're going to go out to restaurants. We're going to go to friends'
hmm,
houses. We're going to go all kinds of places where it's not clean meat and it's
right,
not clean vegetables, and they're giving us potato chips and they're giving whatever they're giving us.
uh-huh, yeah, yeah,
It's fine. It's
right,
absolutely fine. The point is reducing the amount of that in your body, and not stressing out over
yes,
every that again is
yeah,
part of that all or nothing and that diet
yeah,
mentality that we used to. I even hear other coaches, and I personally just don't agree with it. And it could be because of my eating disorder background that I'm just concerned about it. I hear other coaches who I respect very much, but they say bringing their own food places or like
hmm,
restaurants even, I don't, that
yeah,
might be pushing it,
no,
but
I
they
know,
they do. Do
yeah,
you?
I
Okay.
I know people, I know people that have because of food allergies.
Yes.
But I do know people that will just not go out to eat, or yeah, but I mean, I used to
Mhm.
I used to take raw cow's milk to the diner
Oh,
totally.
did you?
Yeah, a long time ago. Now I just get water, but
Yeah.
but yeah, like yeah, yeah,
So, but it's more, I think when I hear it, it's more because of the weight loss
mhm,
mentality than the health too. But I
yeah,
think either way, unless you're eating out breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 6 days a week, and even with that, I would start with one of those meals at a
mhm,
time and just
mhm,
focus on improving that one. But yeah, I think most of us, it's just periodic. And
yeah,
so that doesn't matter. But when your body is overwhelmed and it's up to here and now it's spilling over with the amount of toxicity coming at it, just decreasing it,
mhm,
releases that inflammation and releases the symptoms usually.
yeah,
So nobody has to wait until they can figure
right.
all this out.
Yeah, and like you said, like it leads into that stress piece. I mean, you
Yes.
want to start getting healthy, but if you have that all or nothing mentality and like, well, I have to do all of these things, like just start where you're at. That is like the best piece of advice, and because that makes it attainable. So like,
Hmm.
okay, so you eat a little more protein at the meal today, and then next year maybe you look at like the next step of that,
Yeah.
um and just taking those steps, because that does reduce the stress, because stress is such a driver
It
in
is.
our health problems. And if the more stressed we are, the less that we can like focus and even make better choices and decisions.
Yep.
And I've definitely come from like, not that I was ever like perfect, but like I had a good solid year and a half where I was like eating only clean and like did really, really well. And I wasn't really stressed, but I only had one kid. Like
Mhm.
now I'm like, I have three kids. Things change. Like my
Yeah.
first, I did really great with his food, like early stages until about two. And then like each child then like had a lot more sugar
So hard.
introduced
Yep.
earlier. And like it was what it was.
Yep.
But and I've been talking about this a few times with different people on different subjects, remembering that life is a journey. And so like
Yes.
not stressing about that, "Oh, I have to be perfect today," because that doesn't mean anything in the long scheme of
Mm-mm.
things. Like
Mm-mm.
if I have a bad day, it's okay, because tomorrow I can do better and I still have X amount of years to live. So
Mm-hmm.
just making those continual progress pieces and allowing yourself to still live life and still have a piece of cake at a birthday party if that's what you want. Maybe have
Yeah,
a smaller
absolutely.
piece. Have a big, I mean, like there's still times where I'll eat a whole thing of cookies
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just like in a mood. And then the next day I'm like, probably shouldn't have done that. I feel like crap. But like that's still, it's still that awareness and still being able to
Mm-hmm.
make those decisions. Um when it comes to like the stress piece, what are some of your
Mm.
like top tips for stress and managing
Oh
stress?
my goodness. Well, for me, the working out is, I don't know how I would be able to, it's like physically pushing, and exerting yourself and getting it out of your body rather than like sitting and it's just in here and has nowhere to go.
Mhm.
So that's a big one for me. I would say if somebody is not working out, starting to do it a lot, like that's stressful.
Mhm.
And you don't have to do that. I think now, I think in the past, we only pretty much thought of it as weight loss, but I think now more people are buying into the idea, oh, yeah, exercise is good for us. It is
Mhm.
more than just weight loss, but it's still hard to get there when you haven't done it in a long time. I hadn't exercised in probably over a decade or something when I, started
Yeah.
getting back to it. That's why the one a week was all I could handle.
Yeah.
Um, I had no exercise clothes. I remember to this day what I was wearing. It was like, anyhow. Um, to the first class, the first night I went. So that can be too much for people. Definitely meditation for me is a big one. And I would say, and yeah, like mindfulness and meditation. The biggest help for me, and I think most of the women and people that I've talked to, is using an app, because at first when you haven't done this, like it's almost impossible to just keep your mind still. And even after you
Mhm.
have done it for a while, that's kind of a misunderstanding that we'll ever get to the point where we don't have the monkey mind. It
Right.
happens. But I use Insight Timer.
Mhm.
There's the Calm app a lot of people
I
love.
love
There's
that one.
Headspace. Yeah. and they all have free options. So you can start these apps, and then they'll have paid versions where you just get access to more. But guided meditations really helped me because it gave my mind somewhere to go, and I didn't have to
Mhm.
try to. And so a lot of them too will have like breathing exercises, which is huge for me. We learned that in health coaching school too. The breathing exercises, which puts can help put your body into the rest and digest calm, get you out of fight or flight mode. Walking and being outside. And you talk about a lot about grounding.
Yeah.
What a great place to start. Again, if you don't, can't fathom putting on exercise clothes and going and doing that for an hour, like go outside and stand in the grass in the morning. Go
Mhm.
outside. I do try, this sort of leads into the sleep, but
Yeah.
sleep helps with stress management as well, as you
Mhm.
know. So, like getting morning sun, um, and yeah, keeping the sugar down. Sugar and caffeine for me,
Mm.
if I am already stressed, and I am very sensitive to caffeine, so then that just kind of makes me jittery and more anxious, which, is kind of like another version of being stressed out. So,
Yeah.
and then prayer, my spiritual practices and things like that.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Those are good. And I love that you mentioned like moving the body and exercise because that is such a big help with stress and the fact that it can be you can get into it slowly. It doesn't mean going and getting a gym membership and going 5 days a week. It can mean I was listening to a podcast this morning on hydration. I've like been really into the foundations of stuff
Interesting.
and
Okay.
understanding hydration, and they were talking about the fascia and how the
Mm,
fascia helps to get you like moving the fascia, which is part of movement and exercise,
mhm.
gets your hydration to more parts of your body. Super fascinating. It was amazing. I'll have to send you the podcast.
That is
Um,
fascinating.
and they were discussing, and I've heard of this guy before, and I can't remember like where or how, but like this guy, he wrote a book, and he was 70 and was bedridden.
Mm,
And because, life of work, and I don't know all the things, but he was
mhm.
bedridden and he started doing micro movements. So just like tightening up
Mm,
and
mhm.
releasing, tightening up and releasing.
Wow.
And over time, just doing it. So like bed exercise essentially. And then he eventually, like he's great, like he eventually got himself out of
Fully
that
in
and was like
wow.
fully recovered because we don't move the body. And I'm
No.
at fault for that too. And so like I was in the truck driving somewhere while I was listening to this podcast, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like start
Yeah.
moving my body. And they were talking about twisting, and I'm
Mhm.
like, like it's a piece that we don't think about. And
No.
it is something that helps, like even in just some of those like micro movements without a full body exercise
Interesting.
can be
Uh-huh.
so powerful because you're moving the fascia of your body, you're moving lymph around, and all of that ties into like the nervous system and
Wow.
stress and managing all that. So
Okay.
like
Hmm.
so anyway, I like I and definitely the grounding, getting outside. I like to just walk around my yard a few times if I can in the
Mhm.
morning in the grass, because the grounding and how beneficial that is. And all of those things are free. Like
Yes.
you had said about like the
Breath
cost, and
work.
it's like if we start with a
The
free
free
app
things.
and go
Yep.
outside and just put our feet in the grass, and we let the
Mhm.
sunlight that's also free touch as much of our body as possible, like the sun is charging your cells and setting your circadian rhythm, which then helps, with that sleep and stuff. And it's such a key piece. I
That's
absolutely love that.
fascinating.
Um,
Nature is
yeah,
another one.
yes.
Nature just in general. I never
Mhm.
used to think, I had no connection to it, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find it very calming now.
yes, forest bathing, just being in nature it's so healing, and we don't
Mhm.
realize it. And there can be like a shift period, because like you can be outside and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, this isn't helping. But I was doing really consistent with my grounding practice for over a month. And
Mhm.
then last week, I don't know what happened. And then this Monday, I was like, I am not okay. Like, I am
Mm,
going on, I have made so much progress and
mm,
I just want to
mm,
throw it all away. I'm like, I was
mm,
on this like downhill spiral and
mhm.
I was like, Tuesday morning, I woke up and I'm like, I'm getting outside. I'm spending 30 minutes in the grass because I need to get grounded again. And like, I've been back to it. And, and that's even like, that
Good.
example of doing really well. And it's okay if you fall off, just get back on. It's a little easier the next time and stuff and falling back into the
That's
habits.
such a good point. When we have only, like, speaking of brain wiring that I
Yes.
referred to before, we've kind of wired our brains to think of and approach food a certain way, in unhealthy ways in a lot of our generations. But anyway, when we keep learning that, we will fall off the wagon, we kind of wire falling off the wagon. This is just what I
Mm-hmm.
do. I don't know how to stay on the wagon. So that thing that you just said, that was another of my most unexpected discoveries, that the more I did it, the easier it was to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to go on vacation, you are going to get sick. You are going to be in a pandemic. You're going to be have baby. Like, you're going to have a lot. You're a family
Yeah.
member. I had my mother decline and pass away during this, 10-year 12-year period since I've been on my wellness journey. I was visiting her every night in the
Yeah.
hospital. I couldn't. So there are things that are going to happen, and it never has to mean that, because diet's where you're either on it or you're off it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lifestyle, there's always something you
Yeah.
can do, and
Mm-hmm.
you get back to it in some way, even if not as high as you were, strenuous or good or whatever as you were in the beginning. You can get back to it. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. You'll get back to it faster and faster and faster. And
Mm-hmm.
the other part of that that I noticed is the quicker my body reacted in a
Mm.
positive way. So it's like it remembered,
Yeah.
like, say I was starting to not feel as great because I hadn't exercised for 3 weeks because of, being at the hospital with my mom. If I had done that, 20 years ago when I was on and off diets all the time, I had never built up a strong enough base in my body and in my muscles or whatever to, like, I still felt like a wet noodle when I went back to the gym. But this time, after years of building up a base, I went back to the gym and it was like my strength came back much quicker. I felt great there. I had wired like this is a good place. My
Yeah.
subconscious was giving me dopamine for being there. It's so different. So yes, please, if
Yeah.
if there is one thing, it's just, I think it's that, like, stopping the all or nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's been a huge piece of my year. And
Good.
it is amazing because you
That's,
feel that freedom to be okay with wherever
yeah.
you're at. I mean, like
Yes.
you said, life doesn't stop. Like it's not going to stop. Life is a journey. You're always going to have something come up. Your life's going to have a million seasons. Like I have three
Hmm.
kids and I'm like, it hit me this week. I was like, you know what? I'm in four, five different seasons of my life right now. Like you think about like all the because I have three kids. So like each child is basically a different
Mm-hmm.
season, not to mention the mothering season. I'm also in my season of being a wife and working on my marriage and having a bit, like there's all these
Yep.
pieces and they
Yeah.
all connect. And some days, I can spend extra time with my 9-year-old, and some days, like the baby gets the best of me because
Hmm.
he's my priority because he's the least capable of the three, and that's okay to live that daily life and just make those like I like the like that whole theory in business or life about like that 1%, just be 1% better than you
Yep.
were yesterday because by the end of the year you won't recognize yourself a year ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to picture or believe. I don't know about you, but a lot of women tell me they don't want my, like, baby step approach because I have to have quick results or I'll get bored with it and I'll stop. I'm like, do you stop anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's true. Like, that's not keeping you. This all or nothing thing is not keeping you. So,
Oh.
yes, like, that also is kind of just false mindset, false brain wiring that we have to have quick results.
Mm-hmm.
You want to start to get your dopamine hit and feel successful based on progress,
Mm-hmm.
not on this speedy results that never last.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then you start feeling so good about yourself for your consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And you had said earlier, it starts to snowball.
Yeah.
That first habit you changed all of a sudden isn't hard anymore because you've been doing it for so long. Even if it's I go to bed a half an hour early, it could be something like that.
Yeah.
That starts to just become your norm. It's not hard anymore. You go to bed a half an hour early. And then you can add another habit.
Mhm.
And you do that one until that one is so much part of your life that it's not a big deal. And then you add another one. And like you
Yeah.
said, that's where at the end of your year, you're like, I cannot believe everything I've done. But
Yeah.
if you would have tried to do all of those 12 habits at once, you're not going to stick with them.
Yep. That's exactly right. I absolutely love this. I love the way that this conversation went. It's amazing. All right. So we're coming up at about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So I will ask, well, we didn't talk too much about your business. Share a little bit more about your business and what you do, how you help clients, kind of your client process. And
Okay.
then I have two final questions.
Okay. So I help primarily women over 40, but I have had women in their 20s with aging. And I specifically focus on energy, strength, stamina, food mastery, body confidence. I do not call it weight loss anymore. I feel that if you are focusing on, these wellness points and you need to lose weight, you will.
Mhm.
But mostly women want to feel that energy and they want to feel that strength and that body confidence and they want to get past the food issues. So that is what we work on and the weight will follow.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So the two questions. One, what is your favorite connection piece in wellness? So like how one thing affects another.
Oh my gosh. Hmm. Well, I already was talking about how much food affects the body, but I will actually say this is kind of out of left field, but I did not mention it anymore or yet. In all of the talk about exercise and fitness, one of the biggest things I've learned over the last few years, as I am 60 now, is the importance of stretching and doing like mobility. So how it's kind of with the fascia that you were
Yeah.
talking about. Like if we're going to keep our joints mobile and limber and be able to get up and down off the floor and not pull our back out and not, all of that, it is the importance. The knee bone is connected to the thigh bone and the knee joint is connected to the hip joint. Like you may be pulling out your back because your core isn't strong. You
Hmm.
may have knee pain because your um your arches are falling, like something like
Right.
that. So
Yeah.
how not a good example, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. I do.
How everything is connected. So yes,
Yeah.
just doing like some stretching and some mobility. The reason that I love that too is with older people, that is a way to get in your body
Hmm.
in a completely unthreatening way. You don't have to get in exercise clothes, you don't have to go to a class, you don't have to sweat. You get in your body a little bit, and again, that can release stress. Doing that stretching, you could do it as a gentle yoga.
Yeah.
It gets you back connected to your body, and that alone is a big step because being a friend to our body is the first way to try to want to be able to take care of it instead of not paying attention to it.
Absolutely. I'm gonna take that piece of advice. Last week I was grounding outside and I had the
Mm,
baby. He's 15 pounds. And so we were just walking around the yard, whatever. And I was like, while I'm out here, I should do some squats. I should just, work on squat. I did 10 squats. I was shocked I could do them, number one. And holding him, like, I held him up like a
mhm,
weight.
mhm.
And, whatever. Moved on with my day. I told my husband, hey, I did 10 squats outside. I'm gonna start doing squats every day. Holy cow. The next morning, I was like,
Okay.
what the heck did I do yesterday? And I was like, oh my gosh, it was 10
It's
squats.
the
It
squats.
was 10. And I was like, okay, I got to work on the stretching and mobility first for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. Finalish question. What is one tip? I know we've talked about a lot of them. We've given lots of really good nuggets. What is one tip you'd like to give to those listening around supporting their health and wellness?
Mm. I'll go to the stress. I
Mhm.
do think, the more I learned how that kind of underpins everything and that I do think if we jump right to, even though I feel like food is so foundational and the muscle is so foundational, especially for aging, if we're either going at it in a way that's stressing us out, or our life already is so stressful that we can't add those things, or they're
Mhm.
sabotaging, as you know, like they can, be impacting your hormones and everything else,
Yeah,
is just managing the stress,
yeah,
working on the stress.
I love that one. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
And the final question, where can people find you?
It's debbiethompsoncoaching.com. So that's
Okay,
easy enough.
perfect. And we will link that in the show notes.
Okay.
Anything final that you want to share with the audience before we go?
I think that's it. It's been great being
All
with
right.
you.
Thank you. It was great having you as a guest. And for those listening, thank you so much for listening to another episode, and we will see you again next week.